So Oyster Aquaculture, in 2008, we had no off-bottom oyster farming. It had been tried back in mid-1990s, late 1990s, and given up on. We now have 13 farms, and we have some Alabama farmers in the room, so correct anything that you think is wrong. I don't mind being corrected here. Over the last year, I think the harvest was conservatively estimated at 1.5 million oysters. The seed order for farms in Alabama, Scott, is this still accurate? We're about 20 million oyster seed. Now that's not just, that might be more than Alabama.
More, yeah.
Okay. That's all the orders that you have. Do you have any idea of how many for Alabama currently?
I believe we're probably in the 8 million range.
And it's not February yet, and you know you're going to get more orders still. So, and we don't know what orders are coming in from outside the state. So 2016 numbers, and you know, Steve Crockett actually just asked me for numbers the other day because for a grant they were trying to explain the numbers were being used were probably not that good, and so it's harder to justify why you should do anything if the industry is valuable. So we came up with conservatively estimating the value currently at $1 million a year, the wholesale value. But the potential with the current year and the current acreage would be 2 to 4 million a year. All right. I mentioned that you'd say, well, that why is the difference? Well, 2016 was one of the worst years I've ever had, and I'm not a grower. But I work with growers, and it was pretty horrifying. I'll get to that year. I mean, that was a test, and I hope that it was a test that we now move on from. But the permitted acreage, we have about 25 acres in production last year. Permits in process right now for at least 75 more acres. I mean, a potentially very large increase. Our jobs, I've asked around, estimating full-time jobs. I come up with about 8 full-time jobs across the state and 16 part-time jobs, and I think that's probably conservative. That's probably lowballing. Is that fair? The farm scale of those 13 farms, and I think this is important because when you look at when we talk about oyster farms, there are a lot of smaller farms. Of those 13 farms, probably 3 are currently targeting production in excess of $1 million a year, maybe 1 to 2 million a year, whereas most of the others are maybe 100,000 to 400,000. You know, like a significant production, but we tend to have farms clustered here and here, and not much in the middle. The current potential, as I mentioned, of 2 to 4 million oysters harvested per year. So to give you an example, you know, we just, like on my website, these are the current farms that we have, 13 farms, and a lot of them did decide to go with the branding. So you will see, like, you know, the Pasta Sweet oysters, Bama Bays, Captain Zeke's, and right on down the list. You may have seen some of these oysters in publications, and we've got a number of the farmers here, and a number of these will be at the Alabama Oyster Social. A marketing name helps, a name that will stand out. You've got to have the quality, but it's also nice to have a name that people remember. So we have 5 growing areas. I know a couple states like Virginia's done an oyster trail, and I think North Carolina's got one too. Is that right, Chuck?
We're working on one.
You know, we haven't defined our Napa Valley regions yet. But if this is Mobile up here, we've got farms in Mobile Bay. We wrap around. This is Mississippi Sound. We've got up in Portersville Bay and over in Grand Bay. We've got farms down here tucked in on the west end of Dauphin Island. And then we've got a farm with some permits being applied for out here. So on the south side of, this is Bon Secours Bay, for those of you who've heard of Bon Secours oysters. Those oysters taste different. I mean, we'll go to a raw bar and I'll have oysters, just those oysters, and we will get differences. I mean, people will believe that there are differences in those flavors. I mean, Alabama, you could almost throw a stone across from Florida to Mississippi, but we still get differences in those regions. Notice the vulnerability here, though. If a bad thing happens here, it's probably affecting our whole state. Like, if we get a lot of rain, it's probably affecting all of us. The lesson here was the Alabama Oyster Social was held, was it last year that we had the cancellation? Or the delay, or the year before? 2 years ago, we had an Alabama Oyster Social featuring Alabama oysters only. What's the problem with that? We were closed. And so David Bancroft had bought tickets for chefs and had bought all this and had to postpone it 2 weeks. And so, in the spirit of open arms, that is why we have oysters from all across the region now, because I said, please don't ever do an oyster event again with oysters from only one state. Like, it's a mistake. You could be close. This year's hurdles, I do not know what is in store for us in 2017, but 2016, well actually in 2015, sorry I said 16, 2015 we lost the lease, Auburn's oyster farming park where we had trained a bunch of people. We lost the lease with the family. We now have to move all those. That is what the Alabama Oyster Social is helping raise money for. The wastewater treatment plant at Bayou La Batre, the FDA came in and did a dye study, and suddenly we had rings of closures around that outfall that will only expand. Of course, what do wastewater treatment plants want to do? They want to increase flow. So as they increase that flow, those rings will expand, and that will close things unless we fix that. So that is top priority. Currently, I mean, we're not affected by it currently. The oysters are all fine, but that is something that we know is coming. You have to be prepared for it. Turns out, once you start having success, people who weren't looking at it start looking at it again, or start looking at it for the first time. So I had never met the Alabama Historical Commission. Well, we did, because it turns out they're like, you cannot put a piling in the bottom because you might go through a shipwreck. I'm like, well, could we just learn to define the areas that might have shipwrecks? And they're like, if we don't look, there might be one, so we got to look. So that's a $10,000 survey, because they want ground penetrating sonar surveys. That was, yeah, that went through the roof. Like this was, yeah, it was outrageous. And we made the mistake of trying to argue with it at first, and then realized that we were wasting time. Like, we just had to do the surveys. So the Alabama Marine Police suddenly got concerned that you might run your jet ski activities. So suddenly they're reviewing it and coming up with policies about where farms can go. That was, again, they'd never worried about it for the first 5 years. Harmful algal bloom, El Nino was I hate El Nino. Harmful algal bloom in October of 2015 shut us down for a couple months.
Yes.
And then it started raining, and it kept raining, and it kept raining. So we had all these rainfall closures. Our farmers were basically closed from the end of October to the beginning of May. I think we had maybe 10 harvest days. So I don't know how many of those 13 farms are still here. All right, and then we got to the summer, and then we suddenly started seeing summer mortality like we had never seen before. Guys were talking about 40% mortality in a bag. Never seen that before. They'd clear out a bag, and there'd be more dead right away. So, and oyster drills, which we have, recruited into the bags. Had never seen them recruit into the bags before, but we had little baby oyster drills that decided they wanted to live in our baskets. And then you guys have heard about this seed supply crisis thing. So I'm surprised I have any hair left. It has been, I mean, it was gut punch after gut punch. And I have to think it can only get better, because I can't imagine worse. Yeah.
Well, doesn't kill you.
Right. So this is the Portersville Bay Oyster Farming Park. That's Murder Point down there. And this is the area, this was the lease that we now have to, all this stuff has to be moved. So our 2017 goals, you know, I used to talk about growth. 2017, I would love to see at least 13 commercial farms remain in operation. That's now, I'd love to see expansion, but I'd like to see at least remaining in operation. I'd like us to see if we can do 1.5 million. I'd like to have at least those 25 acres still, but get at least, I'd like to go for 50 more acres if we can get them in the water. I'd like to see at least 10 more individuals trained and in the business. And then I really do believe that this situation and outlook report is something that we need in Alabama and potentially in other states. One of my favorite pictures of oysters, that was an awesome oyster. I enjoyed every minute of that. Any poaching? I see nods, so yes. Have we had massive poaching? No. My experience, I'm a retired clam cop. I left Massachusetts. I had a badge at one point. I was a shellfish constable and shellfish biologist or something. And we would deal with poaching, and there, it was typically pretty small-time theft, but it annoyed the heck out of the farmer, because having a basket open and having somebody come and took a couple dozen drives you crazy. Probably doesn't affect your bottom line that much, but it drives you crazy.
About a couple hundred, 1,000 of them.
Couple 100,000, typically no. Typically you're going to need somebody, my experience with major theft like that is it's somebody who used to work on your farm that doesn't like you anymore and knows where everything is, and so they can come and get your oysters.
There's somebody around in the area that knows.
Yeah, right. That, yes. It is hard to, but we've installed video cameras, we've tried to deal with that. I think that is a reason to work together. I think more eyes in one place is good. But you also have to tend your farm. You can't just leave your farm out there. You have to be a presence. I have to be worried, if I'm a thief, I have to be worried that you might be there that day. Christmas Day is a tough one.
Thanksgiving.